Have you ever thought about opening your own mobile cart or kiosk business? Maybe the facility you manage could establish new revenue by adding coffee, food, or retail services. Cart King International can be the answer to your needs. Cart King is a North American designer and manufacturer of the finest mobile coffee, food, and retail carts and kiosks. Cart King has been working with clients and corporations across North America for 20 years, providing innovative designs, custom manufacturing, and timely delivery. Carts and kiosks are fun, and so are the dozens of designs on our website. Please visit us today at www.cart-king.com or just call us at 1-877-986-7771 and get your sales rolling.
My sound man, Shane McKay, has his business called MacSoundServices.com. That's M-A-C-K soundservices.com. What he does for me is I send him my shows, and he does audio enhancements and stuff like that. He does miracles if you see some of the stuff I send him and how it comes back. So get a hold of Shane at MacSoundServices.com. M-A-C-K soundservices.com. PureSoapFlakes.com. 218-568-2525. Have you ever heard of Castile Soap? Pure Soap Flake Company handcrafts fine soap bars, laundry powder, and concentrated soap flakes using organic vegetable oils from their northern Minnesota facility. Bathe your body and wash your clothes with pure soap products that are free of fragrance, GMOs, palm oil, sodium lauryl sulfate, and synthetic additives. Keep it clean, folks. Pure Soap Flake Company products are kind to living creatures and sensitive skin, safe for drains and waterways, and work great in high-efficiency washers and top and front-loading machines. Order today at PureSoapFlakes.com or give them a call, 218-568-2525, 218-568-2525. Pure Soap Flake Company is a proud member of the Handcrafted Soap and Cosmetic Guild.
Tina Helmuth is writing an ongoing series of fact fiction books that boldly takes on today's most heinous crimes: the abduction, sexual trafficking, and cannibalization of our children. Suffer the Little Children, The Wrath of the Father, and Unbreakable. Deeply researched and mixed with the supernatural, good versus evil makes these thrillers hard to put down, shining a light on the root cause of these crimes and introducing a spiritual solution. Justice will be served. Available at lulu.com in paperback or ebook.
It's the Opperman Report. Join digital forensic investigator and PI Ed Opperman for an in-depth discussion of conspiracy theories, strategy of New World Order resistance, high-profile court cases in the news, and interviews with expert guests and authors on these topics and more. It's the Opperman Report. And now, here is investigator Ed Opperman.
And go. Okay, welcome to the Opperman Report. I'm your host, Private Investigator Ed Opperman. You can find me through Opperman Investigations and Digital Forensic Consulting at my website, emailrevealer.com. If you like today's show, check out OppermanReport.com. That's where we have our members section. All kinds of exclusive content in there. Become a member, help support the show. And for our free archives, you go to Spreaker.com, Spreaker.com, and you can get our free archives. You sign up there for free to follow the show. You get an email every time there's some live content comes out. There's a chat room and stuff like that. And if you like our guest today, Phil Stanfortd, we have a previous show with him, author of White House Call Girl, The Real Watergate Story. That's up on Spreaker. You can go there and listen to that. I just recently had Lisa Peace on the show talking about her JFK book. And I mentioned Phil Stanfortd and his theory here on the White House Call Girl, and she was very agreeable to it. Phil Stanfortd, are you there?
I am here. Good talking to you, Ed.
Yeah, man, it's great to have you back. It's been a long time, 2014. It's 9 long years. No, 5 long years. I'm not so good at math. Okay.
Oh, yeah. Well, that's. I think you nailed that one, yeah.
Now, Phil, you got this great new podcast coming out here. It's the second episode just came out here every Thursday morning on iHeartRadio, Murder in Oregon. Why don't you remind the audience, though, of who is Phil Stanfortd?
Okay, well, I've written for magazines. I was a columnist for the Oregonian and the Portland Tribune for a while. I've written several books on on corruption. Even the Watergate book you mentioned is really about corruption. It's about the mob angle in the Watergate break-in. But the other three books, Portland Confidential, Peyton Allen Files, and Rose City Vice, which is my latest book, are about police corruption and in Portland, Oregon. The try to tell them as stories so that they're not too boring, and that seems to carry over pretty well to the podcast medium. This is the first time I've done a podcast, and it's fun, and it's turning out to be pretty successful. We're pushing. Been out a week, and we're pushing the top 10 nationally.
Oh, very good, very good. And like we were saying off there, you got a great voice for this kind of thing. Now, your previous books are Rose City Vice and Portland Confidential, the Peyton Allen Files, all these different books you've written previously, touch on police corruption up there in Portland. Have you experienced any kind of ramifications from that, like a pushback from the cops and the DA's office and stuff?
Well, you always get pushback. And the first book, was Portland Confidential, was about the old payoff system in Portland, which no one wanted to admit at the time. And even though I was talking about the 50s and 60s, there was a great deal of resistance. The last payoff mayor was a guy named Terry Shrunk, and as it happened, his son, Michael Shrunk, was the DA. He was not happy about it, although he was polite about it. But no one really, even after the book came out, wanted to acknowledge it. It was a regional bestseller. Wanted to acknowledge that it was anything more. First of all, they didn't want to acknowledge that it happened. When they finally had to admit, yes, there was a big payoff scandal at the time, a big corruption scandal, a vice scandal at the time. They didn't want to admit that it was anything more than a temporary aberration. The one I had learned long ago that the people in power, official people, really don't want to talk about these things and reveal anything that's that embarrassing. The last book, Rose City Vice, was about a narcotics scandal, narcotics cop scandal in Portland in the 70s and 80s, and that was a little bit. The pushback was even greater there, and I found that my best sources besides documents were people in the underworld, because the cops almost across the board didn't want to talk about it. Even the cops who weren't dirty didn't want to talk about it, because they feel bound to protect their fellow officers, even if they're corrupt, or they feel they're protecting and I think this is true also, the reputation of the police bureau. So I ended up getting a lot of information, and most of my stories, in fact, from sort of semi-retired crooks who were happy to talk about things because the statute of limitations had run on everything except murder, and they're more than happy to talk about how corrupt how the cops were, more often than not, as corrupt as they were.
Mm. And old crooks do love to gossip. They love to talk, You can get them on there.
Oh, yeah. They've got great stories, too.
It's so true. Well, anyway, the latest story, okay, that the podcast is about, murder in Oregon. Okay, it's on iHeartRadio, right. Like we said, comes out every Thursday morning. It's about again, allegedly corrupt corrections department chief there. Was murdered. Now, I know you can't tell us everything because this is like a whodunit. This is a serial.
Okay, well, yeah. The chief who was murdered had just been brought in, and he had discovered, his name is Michael Franke. That's the subhead of the podcast, Murder in Oregon, Who Murdered Michael Franke? And he had been brought in a little bit over a year before to straighten out the department and get things running straight. And he brought in from New Mexico, where he'd been in charge down there. He was not a typical warden, not a movie police, prison warden. And he was a former lawyer, former judge, young guys in his 40s. That's young to me. And he had, and he was a very humane person too. But he was brought in, and he discovered that there was serious corruption in his department. And he started investigating it and was going to clean house. He told his younger brother that he was going, he discovered an organized criminal element. Those were his words. In his department, he's going to be cleaning house. And the night before, he was scheduled to address a legislative subcommittee. He was murdered outside the building where he worked. He was stabbed in the heart. His body was discovered hours later. He'd been lying in front of the porch. Although they would later claim that they had conducted in front of the building, and although they would later claim that they had conducted a thorough search of the building, his body was out there lying on a porch. And what ensued, as we know now, I mean, this was January 17th, 1989, when he was killed. So it's 30 years ago. And from the beginning, there were questions. I mean, a lot of things just didn't make sense.
Well, let me stop you for 1 second. Let me stop you for 1 second, because I don't care what town you're in. Okay, now this happened in Portland, Oregon.
Pardon?
No, this happened in Portland, Oregon.
No, I'm sorry. It was in the state capital, which is Salem.
Salem, Oregon. Okay.
About 50 miles south of Portland. Yeah.
Okay. Now I don't care. But I don't care what town you're in. Okay. If the top cop or the top corrections officer, his body's found dead in a parking lot, every single cop, right, within 100 miles, is zipping over there, and they're doing perimeters and dogs. They got helicopters. Did that happen?
Well, they had a big police scene out there, but what happened, and it's quite clear now, is that from the beginning, the official investigation was a cover-up. And, it was very difficult to understand that at the beginning, because the police, for what are usually very good reasons, keep the information close. But all the records have been released by now, and we've had a chance to do our own investigation. And it's quite clear that, it was an assassination. It was a cover-up. After about a year and a half, there was so much pressure. I was writing a column for the Oregonian at the time, and I kept raising questions about it. And I wasn't the only one. This is the amazing thing about it, that two brothers of Michael Franke, the man who was murdered, both questioned the official investigation from the beginning, because after all, one of the brothers, Kevin, had that conversation with his brother, who weeks before the murder, about how he was cleaning house in his department, and because of the pressure, they had to do something. They had to do something. So what they did was set up a patsy. They manufactured the evidence against him. They convicted him and sent him to prison for life without parole. I mean, they asked for the death penalty, knowing that they had made up the evidence against him. I think that's easy enough to demonstrate. And a guy named Frank Gable was a small-time tweaker, thief, low-level drug peddler in Salem. They set him up and convicted him and sent him to prison. this, I mean,